You know what happened when I found?
We're chanting Anti-Capitalista?
Yeah, it means we're here, the anti-capitalists are here in Spanish. And it's a chant to unify all of the anti-capitalists. We're against both the Democratic and Republican parties. The 1% has two parties, namely the two different wings of Capitalist Party.
So if you're against capitalists, what do you think would be the system that will replace it?
Before the United States was here, we had the indigenous tribes. They lived in their systems of anti-capitalism.
The who?
The Native Americans are anti-capitalist, for example. Many people don't think about that.
But you know, so you are for the system where people would be brought up the pyramids
that's
in
one
droves,
example. I personally am
have their hearts ripped open and thrown down and buried in mass graves. So that's the system that you. And by the way, back then they didn't even know the wheel. I was in Peru. I was kind of shocked to learn that the Indians didn't have even the wheels, while in Europe we have advanced civilization. So is that what you're trying to get back to? Just curious.
I'm trying to get back to an anarcho-syndicalist structure, which is so different. I just gave an example. I particularly...
Yeah, back to, did it exist before?
Anarcho-syndicalism is it's like trade unionism, etc. It's something that we have in places like Montreal in particular, student movements, self-organized, self-managed.
But as a country, did it ever exist? As a country, as a system, as a sustainable political system?
Yeah, and it's...
it did exist?
Yeah.
For the whole country?
So I'll give you several examples of that. The student movements in Montreal, which are about 400,000 strong.
But you live in a capitalist Canada. The last time I checked, is as hardcore capitalist country as it can be. In fact, especially now with the conservative government. No?
I mean, first of all, Montreal is distinct from Canada in that
it's part of the country. You cannot take, a city and say it has a different system.
I agree with you.
Okay.
And the other thing is, you have to look at different tendencies within a country. I mean, right now China is technically a communist country, but in reality markets function very capitalist. So it's not, black
and that's
and white.
why, and by the way, that's why the standard of living has improved dramatically in China. Dramatically. Now that they embrace the capitalism to a great degree, the standard of living has improved dramatically. Dramatically.
And this is where I disagree, because we take a place like the United States where the bottom 1% makes about $34,000 a year, but that's still the top 1% of the world, and so many libertarians and free market advocates use this as an example of, even in a capitalist system where the lowest people are living a, quote, higher living of standard than the top people, they're the 1% of the world, but I disagree with that notion because...
With what notion?
The notion that just because the bottom 1% of people in the U.S. are making $34,000, which is a lot more than in most places, I don't think they're living a higher standard for several reasons. A, there's a lot higher costs of living. There's higher costs. You could be making more money in the United States than, say, in Mexico or in China, but the cost of products, the cost of rent, food, basic necessities of life, education, those are a lot higher. And education in particular is monstrosical.
Okay, let me ask you a simple arithmetic. Obama likes to talk about arithmetic. When, let's say, your income, no matter what the expenditures are, if you get $2,000, you have $2,000 in your hand, right?
Yeah.
If, let's say, you live on $1 a day, which is the case in many African countries and unfortunately, many countries in the world, no matter what, no matter how cheap the goods are, you still have $1 a day in your pocket. So which one is better?
That's the question. That's the problem I have when we talk about what's better for you. And too many people in this nation have been taking that logic and doing what's best for them and them only, and not say for the rest of society. So I wouldn't mind having $2,000, but there's a big difference between everyone having a chance to get $2,000 and, say, only a small group of people having a chance of getting $2,000. And so when we talk about food, healthcare, job, I have all of those things, but not everyone in this world has those things. And we have enough for everyone to have food, to have healthcare.
And why is that?
I think there's not enough to pay for everyone's greed. If you look at materialistically, the United States produces about 5% of the world's resources, but consumes 28% of the world's resources. It's just not possible for other nations to, afford for themselves. And then there's instrumental institutions like World Bank, World Food Organizations, International Monetary Fund.
But let's try to think logically.
Yeah.
China being an example. And by the way, I come from Russia originally. So,
China and the United States are very similar right now economically.
But it's a very interesting point. Why? Why China all of a sudden has gotten so much better? Why the standard of living has improved
So what do you mean
dramatically?
by so much better? That's my
the
question.
standard of living. Even when it comes to freedoms, at least there's no dictator. Even though technically, yes, they still have a communist party.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it
technically, even though they don't enjoy as many freedoms as we enjoy in this country. God bless it. But compared to Mao Zedong, the guy who killed more people than any living being ever in the history of humanity. That's what I mean by the improved standard of living, one, and the freedoms too. So getting back to
let's get into standard of living, because you're talking
getting back
about
to
it
standard of living, exactly.
cumulatively.
So speaking of the standard of living, what has changed between Mao Zedong's China and today's China economically? Well, somewhat politically too, obviously. What has changed?
I mean, they've expanded a lot of trade internationally. It's a lot less.
There's one word. I'll help you out. See, you're chanting Anticapitalista. What was Anticapitalista or something like
In
that?
Spanish, yeah.
In Spanish, okay. So they embraced capitalism, basically in China, free markets. To a great degree. Again, obviously it's not free market is here, but that thing alone did help the Chinese to improve their standard of living dramatically. So the case in point is capitalism is good, and this is the largest country in the world population-wise. The largest country.
I just have questions when you say the standard of living increase. What are you talking about with that?
What I'm talking about,
Because you talk about the freedom in the United States as one of the most free countries in the world. Would you agree with that?
Of course, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, the United States has 25% of the prison's population. Native Americans living in this country, their own land, they have the shortest lifespan more than any other nation. The United States as a whole has a higher lifespan.
What's the lifespan of an African man or woman? Do you know?
It's about 49 years old.
Not even less than that. Anywhere between 30 and 40 years. In Africa in 2012.
And do you know what the lifespan of a Native American is here?
I'm sure much better than in Africa.
It's 44 years old.
Well, look, if you drink, if a lot, which unfortunately they do.
But wouldn't it be very profitable to set up liquor stores? That's part of the profit motive. I agree with you with the drinking.
So I mean, you cannot.
Liquor stores have no incentive to do what's good for the public.
You cannot guide every single person through their life. This is my definition of why this country is the best country in the world, and what the definition of the best country in the world. It's not so much the income redistribution or income disparity, which will always be there. It's the equal opportunity. No other country in the world, would you agree with me? No other country in the world will provide people with as much opportunities as this country does. Equal opportunities, that's the key word, equal opportunities.
So you really,
not equal outcome.
So you really believe if you are born in a poor family that you have the same exact opportunity as someone wealthier than you?
You know who are talking to? You're talking to a person who in 1988 came to this country with $100. That's it. That's all that I had in my pocket. Now,
I'm just not convinced that wealth is the only factor here. There's race, gender, orientation, education.
I'm an immigrant. If you want to talk about disparity, well, I'm supposed to be, kind of in the immigrant category. I still have an accent.
I mean, I'm an immigrant myself, and that's not the point.
So have you succeeded in this country?
Sure, and I'll tell you why I have succeeded
Why?
in this country. I have
Why?
the social capital, contacts. I have a support system. Whether it's my
fine,
family.
fine.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
we're
there's no
supposed to.
reason to be guilty about being quote successful.
No.
My problem is there are
Yes.
too many people in this nation who do not have any chance nor any opportunity.
Like
let alone
who? Like who? Give me a group of
people of color, indigenous people, Native Americans.
The last time I checked, Barack Obama calls himself black, even though, he's just as black as he's white. Well, he likes calling himself black. Okay, be it black. So how can you say, for crying out loud, that the blacks do not have an opportunity when a black person is the president of the United States of America, the most powerful position than any other position in the whole world? I mean, this argument should have been over. With the election of Obama, this argument should be over. That's it. We elected the first black president. What discrimination? What racism? Are you kidding me?
I think using one man out of 300 million is not a great set of, setting the example. And I think many people voted for him for that reason. When Obama was elected, for many people, that was their way of saying, we don't live in a racist country. We have a black president. It's absolute proof that anyone can become president. And I don't agree with that. When you have over 3 million black people in jail right now, which is more than during the Jim Crow era.
Okay, let me get to this point then, okay? Ted Bundy. You know Ted Bundy,
Say it
right?
again?
Ted Bundy. Does this name ring the bell? Probably the first mass murderer. The guy who was a lawyer, nice white man. He killed, I believe, several dozen women, innocent girls, innocent women. The point that I'm trying to make is that no matter what they're bringing, no matter what the color, they're criminals in this world, whether you like it or not. If it just happened that the blacks are disproportionately, and there's the reason why. It's a long story why, because of their so-called leaders like Al Sharpton, others who think that the blacks have to be spoon-fed by the government as opposed to standing on their own feet and making something out of for themselves. I mean, that's what any normal person would like, to be someone, to be something, right? I mean, I'm sure you would like to become someone, to hold some position, to help the world, for crying out loud, okay? So the point I'm trying to say is that the reason the blacks they're more disproportionately blacks in the prisons because they commit more crimes.
800,000 people every year go to jail for owning cannabis or weed, essentially.
Look,
and I'm not convinced that people of color smoke it more than white-collar students do.
It's a different story. If you want to legalize marijuana,
when people go into
fine.
We agree
pass
on
the
that.
legislation, whatever.
I'm glad we agree on that, but the reality is 800,000 people,
yes.
90% of them people of color, are going to jail for this.
For what? For peddling marijuana?
Owning cannabis, which is the same thing
they're peddling. They're peddling marijuana. That's how they make a living, as opposed to having the leaders who would actually help them to stand on their own feet, not get these, free phones and stuff like that, not getting free this, free that. I mean, we are the United States of America. We're the country of individuals. We're the rugged individuals. That's how this country started, no?
No, this country started on slavery. The Congress and the White House were built by slaves. And after...
Slavery is a totally separate issue. We can talk about slavery. Yes,
it
is.
In the 1880s, after slaves were freed, we had all these anti-vagrancy laws because, as you would say, individuals have to stand up on their feet. They shouldn't be loafing around.
Yes.
So you have all these freed slaves out there in the South, and the police departments are expanded to take on all of these people of color, namely freed slaves.
I understand.
It's a violent cycle, and it continues to this day.
Look, I understand that back in 1950s, the blacks were supposed to sit in the back of the house. I'm against it. I understand. Things were different back then. They were different. We've improved dramatically. We're not the same as we were 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. I'm Jewish. I know that, back then there were signs that the dogs and Jews are not allowed on the beach. I understand. I'm against it, but things have improved dramatically. So I'm talking about America today. I'm talking about the leaders today. Nothing prevents black Americans today to stand on their own feet. Nothing. Except their leaders, except their ideology. Wouldn't you agree with that?
So you really believe that the 13% of people who are unemployed because they want to be unemployed, or they're not?
Well, if you want to talk about unemployment, then you have to talk about Obama policies. It's a totally different issue. Remember what unemployment was under Bush?
I mean, I think it was under Bush that we had the spike in unemployment to begin with.
No.
And Obama has continued it, I think.
Well, then it will be even higher. I mean, under Obama, we had for 40 plus months unemployment exceeding 8%. And again, the way we count unemployment, because there are two ways, obviously, of counting
I mean,
unemployment.
it's officially about 8%, but I think real unemployment's around 13%.
This is correct number. It's just there are two numbers. That's my point.
Okay.
U6 number, which considers unemployed as those who don't get unemployment benefits and who do not actually
searching, if they're
exactly
not searching
right.
to get off.
So this number we know is approaching about 15 or so percent.
Yeah.
So every sixth American, by this standard, is unemployed, and it's horrendous. And it's all because of Obama's policies, because of the system that works is low taxes and small government. And the whole crisis, it all started. It started with Clinton. We started with Community Reinvestment Act. Obama being community.
Would you agree to down the largest government expenditure is the military budget? Would you agree to downcut the military budget?
Absolutely not. And I'll explain why. Military. I mean, what's the percentage of the military is as the percent of GDP? Not let's say the budget, but GDP.
It's around 10%, I believe. The military budget's around $1.2 trillion every year.
Well,
and the GDP is around 20 trillion.
It's less than that. It's about 15, 16 trillion.
Okay, yeah.
So
It's
the same as our debt. So by this measure, it's only 4%.
Can we move somewhere to?
Okay. So it's only 4%. And especially now we need the military because look what's happening in the world. We just had our ambassador killed in Libya. We had 9/11 here in New York City, just 15 or so miles away from here. So we have enemies around. Obama thought that once he become the president, because he was in Indonesia, he speaks Arabic and stuff like that, that the world will start liking us. No, I mean, we all know. We all know that.
You might want to interview this friend as well.
What's that? I know this guy.
Yeah, he comes to our meetings like stalking us and videoing
Stalking,
us for his
right.
right-wing blogs.
Right, I'm a right-winger.
He's a classic. You know, he came to the Cynthia McKinney meeting, and yeah, he's
Right.
a good one. We like him.
Good. So.
Just remember, if you say anything good, he won't post it. So
I know.
just keep that in mind. But you know, keep it shocking enough that it'll scare his right-wing audience. Like if you say like, I don't believe capitalism is good, his right-wing audience like shits a brick, and so it's like.
But that's your position.
It's like shocking. It is my position.
Okay.
Yeah, right. It is.
I know,
But it scares your audience if you put it up there, right? So like that kind of stuff I like. But, yeah. You know, it's kind of convenient. It's like on the one hand we get our message out, on the other hand your audience, which is so right-wing and idiotic, that they are in shock that anyone would not believe in capitalism. So you post up these videos.
Give me a good argument. Give me a good argument in favor
you won't
of.
post it. You're a right-wing
I will.
blogger.
I promise.
No, you
I
won't.
promise. I promise. No, I
Come on,
promise.
I've done a million
I'll give you my card. You can Google. I'll give you my channel. By all means.
This guy's a right-wing guy. He came to the postal meeting with Cynthia McKinney.
Yeah.
He's a right-wing blogger.
Right.
So yeah,
I thought he was a cop.